We have here a Blues Junior, a fairly recent one in tweed, and it came in saying missing the hardware that holds the jack in place. You can see that jack's got a lot of wiggle to it, and when those wiggle, because that nut's not tight, they tend to break their solder joints. And I thought, well, I've got some hardware that fits that, and indeed I do. There's the washer, and there's the nut. And I have those because I often replace these jacks with higher quality switchcrafts. And I happen to have one of those right here for that purpose. But when I went to put the nut on here, I noticed what you can see here, all the plastic threads have just been annihilated. They're just gone. They're worn away smooth from someone trying to put the nut on at an angle. Let me try to demonstrate that. See that angle right there? If I were to try to tighten like that, it will just chew up everything. You have to have it parallel to the surface of the top of the chassis. Now this particular one will not do that now because the threads are all gone. But I see this quite a bit. So I'm going to open this up and see if that's the only thing wrong with it. If that's the only thing wrong with it, I will put in a higher quality switchcraft jack and it'll be good to go. But often with Blues Juniors, there's the problem the owner knows about, and there are other problems waiting to become big bad nasties. Well, so far everything in here looks pretty good. There's no leakage from the caps, which are common in these. The output tubes are running way too hot with a stock bias, but the tubes themselves don't show any discoloration yet, and no problems with the solder joints here. There's a factory jumpered wire where they made a mistake in production. That's pretty common in these. I'm going to see if moving these ribbons farther away from this blue primary lowers the hum a little bit. Just background stuff. Using the insulated rounded end of the screw, the pliers to do it. Trying to be gentle but firm. I don't want to break anything. No real difference on this one. On others, it can be very drastic. Not getting any nasty sounds. That's good. Real quick, let me make sure it's passing signal well and that jack has not been cutting out. My wife's asleep in the other room, so this is going to be a very low volume quick test. Sure is a lot of movement on that jack. Let's see if that correlates to sound out of the amp though. All right, well that's a good sign. That means that while the threads of the jack are foobar, that needs to be replaced, nothing else has really taken any damage. So I will call the owner and let him know that I will put in a switchcraft metal frame jack and all his input jack problems will be a thing of the past. And I will mention that I strongly urge that I cool the bias so he will have long tube life and not have all the heat-related damage occur in this that is very, very common to Blues Juniors. Let me power it off and check one thing that can be an issue on these. Further testing will wait till after I change that jack, because when I have the board pulled down, I can triple check all the solder joints and such. And I'm not going to do much playing right now. Like I said, my wife is asleep. But let's check these screen grid resistors in here. 98.7, 98.9, and the grid stoppers. 1.46, 1.46. So they're all within spec. These screen grids are the ones that I worry about. They're 100 ohm half watts, and that should really be both a 1 or 2 watt resistor and a much larger value than 100 ohms. I will talk to the owner about letting me bump those up when I have the board pulled out to get to this jack, because that's just 2 resistors and it's easily done. And again, will prolong tube life if I give it a real input jack and upgrade the screen grids to some 2 watt 1Ks and cool the bias down to a very sane 55-60% idle dissipation as opposed to the 110% that comes from the factory. His output tubes will last a lot longer and the amp will sound even more Fendery without doing a bunch of Bill M mods and cramming a bunch of orange drops in everywhere. If it were mine, I'd also change out the filter caps, but I'm not trying to spend his money for him. I'm trying to give him a suitable repair with some very easily done options while I'm in there. I will make the cap job available to him so he won't ever have to talk to me about this amp again in the future. But, that is totally his call. That's the kind of thing that sometimes can wait until it becomes a problem. It rarely blows up or becomes a big fire hazard in these when these begin to leak. You just get noise and buzz and yuckiness. So not really a hazard. It's just one of those things.